Hello, I'm Bud McCord. I'm here in Brazil, South America. Welcome to Food for Thought, Thinking with Jesus. It's the 7th of September. This is a significant date for the McCord family. We arrived here in Brazil as missionaries in 1979 on the 7th of September. When we got out of the airplane at the city of Campinas, Sao Paulo, with our three small children, we went into the city of Campinas for the first time. I thought Brazil was such a quiet, calm place. And then I discovered it was a holiday weekend. Today is Brazil's Independence Day. And on the 7th of September, it's so quiet. But on the 8th, reality comes back. People come back. The noise goes up. The excitement goes up. The joy comes back. The complexity comes back. It's a little bit different on the 8th than it is on the 7th. But it's a wonderful memory for us that we've spent connected to Brazil almost 41 years. We want to talk today about something that's written in our spiritual DNA, something that's written into every single human being's spiritual DNA. There's something that every human being senses and knows. I'm convinced of this. I believe it's truly biblical. And I want to talk to you about it, and we can think about it together, then you can think about it with Jesus. The devotional is called Written in Our DNA. Let me read it, then we'll think together. The desire to be loved and love others is written in the spiritual DNA of every human being. According to the Gospel of John, this desire to be loved and to love is the result of the light Jesus is to every human being that enters the world. John 1:9 says, the true light that gives light to everyone coming into the world. I was trained many years ago to ask people if they would like to go to heaven when they die. And then I could start a conversation about Jesus and his sacrifice for us. I've seen great results using this question. However, today, I also use another question to talk about Jesus. I ask people, do you want to be deeply loved and love deeply? It seems like most of modern people don't think a lot about going to heaven anymore, but I believe every person living today wants to be loved and love. This is why I started asking more questions about being loved and loving. Jesus still is the only way to go to heaven, and I will keep on asking people if they want to go to heaven. However, I intend to ask people more and more about being deeply loved and loving deeply. When you take a person in the direction of loving and being loved, you are taking them toward Jesus. Love the people in your life and do not be afraid to ask them about being loved and loving. Something in their spiritual DNA will help them recognize this message about Jesus and love. We live in a time when we don't talk much about going to heaven when we die. It's because we're in the West, especially in Europe and in the United States and in South America, in the westernized part of the world, especially. We're in a very secular society. And a secular society is not interested in what comes after because they're just not worried about what's coming after. They're basically worried about what's going on right now. A secular society doesn't quite have time to really meditate about metaphysical questions or religious questions. Every true religion in the world talks about what comes next, whether it be reincarnation, as some believe, whether it is being united back to the essence of the universe, or in the case of Islam, their concept of the eternal life. But in Christianity, the question of going to God's presence and to heaven is a central part of the Christian faith. Things changed a lot in the last 150 years. I'll give you an example of the kind of changes that have happened. In 1900, the average human lifespan, now that's the sum of all the people that were being born, and then they come up with a number of the average human lifespan, because in that time, infant death was much higher. The average lifespan in the United States and Europe, let's say, was about 48.6 years. To give you an idea, here in Brazil, at that same time, 1900, it was about 33 years. A significant difference. In 1950, in the Western world, let's call this the United States and Europe, it was up to 65.6 years. In Brazil, again, it was much lower. In 2020, it's 78.9 years. And now Brazil is just about at the same place that Europe and the United States is. So what changed? What happened is people were more aware of the reality of death in the 1900s than we are right now. We literally have kind of pushed death away to the hospitals, and we're not aware of death. I'll give you another interesting way to think about this. Back in the 1900s, 150 years ago, 160, 170 years ago, a minister in a seminary, a part of their training was this: it's preparing people for a good death. That literally was a part of the curriculum, preparing people for a good death. I can guarantee you that's just not a course in today's seminaries across the world. We talk more about preparing people for a productive life or a useful life or something to do with impacting our society. But the idea of heaven is just about eliminated. We don't sing about heaven that much anymore. And it's partly because we've extended our lifespan for the average person now to the point where we can kind of think we can just eat, drink, and be merry because tomorrow, we don't know about that. People are not thinking that much about going to heaven. I'm not saying they shouldn't be. I'm saying that's the reality. The question, do you want to go to heaven when you die? When I ask that question to people today, they go, why are you bringing that up? But now here's a question that is relevant to them, which is really, really interesting for us to think about, and we want to think about this with Jesus. I believe that written into the spiritual DNA of every human being, there's a desire to be perfectly and profoundly and continuously loved. We are hungry and thirsty to be continuously and perfectly loved. It's written into our spiritual DNA. And part of our frustration with life is that experience seems to be so rare. There's another desire that's in our spiritual DNA, and that is there is a desire in the heart of a human being to love. I think every human being knows they should be loving people. People are never shocked when I bring up the question or I make the statement, don't you think that human beings know they should love people? And I think everybody goes, yeah, they do. It's just we can't get it right, or maybe somebody's been treated so bad that they can't love any, and they start making all kinds of excuses, but it still doesn't take away the fact that they understand that we should be, as human beings, loving. Then comes a question, who should we love? How should we love them? What if they do something? Then it comes a whole lot of questions. So when I ask people, especially younger adults, what is your plan for being deeply and continuously loved? And what is your plan to love other people? What is your plan? Do you have a plan? Then I can talk to them about my plan. And my plan is Jesus. I will abide in his perfect love. And from that perfect love, he will perfect my love. That's my plan for all my time in this world. But that plan just leads to the next part, which is, and I will do that eternally with Jesus in heaven or on earth or wherever I'm at. Whatever comes after, to me, is a part of what is already happening to me right now. I think that we should think about this very deeply. Here's a question that you could think about this. Does the fact that people no longer think about going to heaven hurt the quality of their love here? I know that people have said over the years, you're so heavenly minded, you're no earthly good. And that can happen. We can be so heaven focused that we don't even notice the people around us. I think that can happen. But I think there's another thing that we need to think about, and that is what happens to us when we actually stop believing there's something that comes afterwards? Does it make us more loving? It's a good question, isn't it? I think that the fact that I know that there is something afterwards, what it does for me, it makes me want to take advantage of every moment I have here, because people need to be loved now. And they need to know what it feels like to be loved now. I believe that we as followers of Christ should be in the business of loving very seriously every person we come into contact with, because there is something after. I'm not secular. I don't think only in secular terms. I am way more spiritual than secular. I have to live here like everybody else does, but I know that after I die, there's going to be perfect love, and I'm going to be involved in loving people for all eternity. I might as well get started now, because it is the reason I exist. Do you want to go to heaven when you die? I do. I always have since I accepted Jesus. But I'm not in any big hurry, because right now, because I know the outcome is good for me, there's a lot of people that need to be loved. And as long as I have breath, as long as I have life, I want to be deeply loved, and I want to love. Sounds like a good plan to me. I think Jesus had it perfect. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. Don't lay up treasures here. Lay up treasures there. But while you're here, be the treasure of love in other people's lives. Give that some thought. Think about that with Jesus. I think it would be good for all of us, especially all of the young people. What's your plan to be loved and to love? Well, to me, my plan is Jesus. I hope you'll think about that too. God bless you.